Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashikritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomabhat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarasto Andakaro Vai Rukarasto Nivartakaha Andakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padam Bhujanmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So last week we had given a summary of the chapter headings and the relationships of the various chapters. So I won't go into that again. We have already established that just recently in the last week. So we will now go and study the contents of chapter 13, Advaitananda in Brahmananda. That's the heading of the chapter. Somewhat closer to what the text is, because in the last couple of classes I had given a kind of a general introduction to Karana Karya Bhava, if you recall. So we need to understand it is always more revealing to find out the cause of things. Like, for example, very simply, if you have a disease that has some symptoms, so you can treat the symptoms somewhat adequately at times. But if it keeps on repeating, then you need to find out the cause of the symptoms. Just by merely tackling the symptoms, which is karya, which is an effect, does not really have a fundamental effect on the karana. So therefore, in general, this rule holds that the more we are able to find the causes of things, the better off we will be in terms of our overall solutions. So in the quest of doing that, we have seen the various thoughts, the various schools of thoughts about Karya Karana Bhava. So we had seen, for example, the Arambhaka Vada, then we saw Parinama Vada, then we saw the one which the Vedantins are very close to it, called Vivartavada. And then we saw that within this Vivartavada there is a further refinement, because the Vivarta can only be defined in terms of transactional reality, isn't it? Because, for example, gold and its ornaments is a transactional reality. So there the Vivarta works very well, no doubt about it. Vivarta means that even though the karya changes, the karana does not change. So that's what's called Vivarta. And so in the case of the various examples given, that of earthen material and the pots made out of it, or the cloth made out of the various ingredients, the cotton, etc., silk, etc., or the ornaments made out of the metal, the the wooden things made out of wood itself, table, all those kinds of things. So we have a vivarta upadana karanam. But in the case of Atma, it was said that even this is not the final stop, because the Atma is defined to be nishkriyahan and it is not possible to have any segments to it. It has no capability to it itself. So how can that become a adhisthana for upadana karanam, for vivarta karanam? Like a gold is in adhisthana, means it's a basis for all the ornamentation. So you can say that in the case of in the ornamentation also there is some change. Even though we say that the metal doesn't change, but there is some modification of the metal. Even though it's not a permanent modification, it may be temporary, but there is a modification. But if you say that the Atma is nirvayava, has no parts to it, niranshaha, has no segmentation to it, and so how can that become the vivarta karanam? So there we saw there is actually another karana karya bhava, which is called bhava karanam. Bhava karanam. So bhava karanam means that it is very possible that you can, without having any basis, you impute something to it. Just like we impute snakeness on the rope or blueness on the space. So similarly, there is a possibility that without touching it, you can impute something to it. And so, really speaking, if you want to understand the true nature of yourself, as we will be studying more and more detail, you will find that the bhava karanam, bhava means is some kind of a mental vritti, some kind of a mental conclusion. So bhavana or bhavaha, that can create a problem. So in fact, the acharyas always say that really speaking, the jagat is not a problem, but one's mental approach to the jagat is could be a problem, and that is what is called samsara. So the difference between jagat and samsara, as we have seen before also, is the basis of bhava karanam. That you like something, you dislike something. This is what happens. Swami Akhandananji gave this very interesting example in something similar to this when he was explaining this. He says one time he and another Mahatma, both of them were just kind of walking and visiting some places. They went to a place in Uttar Pradesh called Balia. Many of you from India, the northern part, may have heard about it. It's called Balia. Balia is I think either in Uttar Pradesh or in Bihar, I'm not sure. So there was some kind of a huge function there that was going on, and these two Mahatmas just had never seen Balia. They said, let's go see Balia. So they went there, then some of the people were saying, there is a big utsava going on. Utsava means a kind of like a mela, and it is all about thoughts, spiritual thoughts of the people, and would you like to come and participate? Because we didn't know you were coming. They said we also didn't know that we were coming. We just happened to be there. So they went there, kind of like somebody just introduced them to the thousands of people who were sitting outside, and they were very well welcome. Then somebody said, Swamiji, can you please give a small talk? So Swami Akhandananda said, I'll be happy to. So he gave a small talk there, and people were so impressed by his talk that they started asking the organizers, where's the Swami from? And where is he going to be tomorrow? We want to really go after him and so on, and to listen to him. So the organizer said, no, we have a function going on, and you cannot just disturb it. They are just only here for one day. They'll be back. Well, as it happens, they did not come the next day, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people who had collected to near where they were staying, and they gave up the utsava and came and listened to these people. So now the organizers of the utsava were very unhappy. They said these swamis, they had an agenda. They wanted to come and steal away our people, and so they really became very angry with them. Instead of thanking them and so on, and they were legitimately disturbed by the disturbance amongst the people, because a lot of people got split. Swamiji says, I felt so bad, I didn't know what to do. So he decided he's going to go. He wasn't planning to stay on, but he decided to come back to the Utsava and just sit there and listen and perhaps participated and so on, just so that it doesn't disturb the rest of the people. So he was saying that our intentions were not bad, but people took it to be a bad intention. So he says this is how life is, really. The reality is one thing, but we impute our own subjectivity to it and make it good or bad. So this is the difference between Jagat and Samsara. So the Jagat is created by Ishvara. It's a variety. There's different kinds of people. There's whites, blacks, browns, women, men, all kinds of animals, this, that, or the other. This is just a variety. But then we put our own likes and dislikes on top of that, and as a result of that we suffer. So this is samsara. So this is what is called bhava karanam. And so ultimately speaking, as you will see when I start to teach the Mandukya Upanishads with Karika, our second version, which I'm really not preparing, but I am looking forward to it. One of these days we will do that. And probably I would say that will be the class, because that will go on for years. I'm getting so much out of it. Never have I seen such clarity as it is given in Swami Akhandanandaji's version. Even Swami Maheshananda's was, I think, a preparation for this. This is the ultimate. So we will go into that in more detail, what is called Bhava Karanam. But here, this is what it is. It's a stages of Shrishti, stages of how the multiplicity expresses itself in the views of many people. So we went into that. So now, as I promised to you, I'm going to stick to some of the text verses itself. So with that, let's go to chapter 13, verse number 10. Okay. So let's read it just very briefly, and then we can do that. So on this Hindi book, it says on page 1379, number 10, chapter 13, number 10. Tato niramshaha anande vivarto jagadishyatam maya shakti kalpika syad aindrajalika shaktivat. Tato niramshaha anande vivarto jagadishyatam maya shakti kalpika syad aindrajalika shaktivat. So he says, really speaking, the niramshaha atma, the one that doesn't any parts, because of vivarta, here he is taking vivarta itself, he is not going into bhava karanam, just staying at vivarta, and vivarta for most purposes is okay. He says Jagat Ishyatam, may you see Jagat as nothing but a vivarta of the Atma. Atma is the adhisthana, the very substance, and the seeming variety of its shrishti is the vivarta. And so he says in the second line, he says, Maya Shakti Kalpika Syad Aindrajalika Shaktivat. And how is it done? How is it done? This is the power of creation by our mind. Our mind has tremendous power to project plurality when there isn't any. So, for example, in the case of the ornamentation, you can there is no real difference between a 1 ounce, some one kind of ornament 1 ounce and another kind of ornament 1 ounce. Practically, there is none, but our mind makes a big deal out of it. I like that ring. I don't like it to be a kind of an ear. I like it as a ring on the finger, but not on the ear. That I don't like. And so the likes and dislikes are only in the names and shop, but not in the gold itself. So this is the Maya Shakti. One thing we should understand, and I've already talked about this, it took me a little while to really get to this understanding, that the Maya Shakti is not an external power which is holding me back. It is in fact a power given to me by Ishvara in the form of ignorance that makes me project things and then fall for it, fall for its control over me. This is exactly what happens. So you project things, and so that Shakti, that power, is distributed amongst all of us. Not as though I am a jiva sitting here and the Maya Shakti is over there and it's controlling me. It's not like that. The basic Maya Shakti, of course, is the very part and parcel of the world. But each of the jivas is given the same Shakti by which it projects itself and then falls for its control, under its control. This is exactly what happens. So this is the Maya Shakti which is there in each one of us. Sorry. Sorry, I've been somewhat under the weather. I think I caught a cold from my youngest granddaughter the other day. She came and she had a cold, and I think I got it from her just last night. So here, for example, what happens here is fundamentally that this Maya Shakti makes me project things as though they are outside of me. And in the process, it hides my own reality to myself. And the best example of that is the dream state. But it is not just the dream state. In fact, what you find is that in all three states, this Shakti becomes effective in different ways. So in the waking state, what hides me from myself is my following the things in the world. I'm so involved in the outside, so-called outside things, and it has such a hold on me that either good or bad, I'm either attracted to things or I am repelled by them. I'm protected, I'm trying to protect from some harm, or I go after some things that are very attractive to me. So, but my whole life is so full of engagement with these projections, with the things outside of me, what is called Vishaya. So Vishaya means the ones that Badhnati, they hold me in tightly in their. This is what happens from the morning I wake up to the evening before I go to sleep. I am fully engaged with my drishti is okay. What happens today? You had mass shootings. Where? What happened? What was the motive of the person? And then football scores. This, that, or the other. The whole day I'm engaged with outside things. So this is what happens in the Jagrat Avastha. Right? Then the same Maya Shakti projects itself in the dream state. And in the dream state, my mind takes over and plays tricks with me. Plays tricks with me. So really speaking, at least in the in the waking state, I can say there are legitimately outside things that are bothering me, and I have to deal with them. Telephone comes in. What do you expect me to do? Early in the morning, if the telephone calls, I have to take it up. So it's not as though I want to do it, but I'm forced to do it because there is something is going on that I have to respond to. In the dream state, there is nothing going on outside of me, and yet my mind plays the tricks with me. It projects things that are engaged with me. So in the mind, in the dream state also, I don't have a chance to really discover myself. I'm half asleep anyway, and my mind is keeping me engaged. It is as though I'm seeing a kind of a movie, and hours pass by, movies change, I'm very engaged with it. So the Maya Shakti also plays with me through the mind in the dream state. In the deep sleep state, even though there is no projection, my mind itself dissolves and I'm not able to cognize myself. Nobody can become muktaha. You cannot achieve mukti in deep sleep. It is not possible. Because you have a complete ignorance, self-ignorance in the sleep, and it doesn't allow you to really wake up to the reality of yourself. So the same Maya Shakti that I have acts in three different ways, depending on what stages I am in during the day, 24 hours. So this is what happens. And of course, the only chance I have to reflect on my own reality is in the waking state. I cannot do it in the dream state. I cannot certainly not do that in the sleep state, but in the Jagrata Avastha. In the Jagrata Avastha, as Adi Shankara has pointed out, in there's a anyway, I cannot find it, but he says, in Adi Shankara says that until your mind becomes pure, so-called the purity of the mind takes place, even though the words are spoken to me that you are the whole thing, you are non-changing, you are never born, they do not have an effect on me. They do not, the words are real. They are spoken by a truthful person in a truthful manner, but I don't get it. Even though I have Shraddha towards it, I still don't really understand the veracity of the fact that I'm an independent person. And what's the reason for it? Why don't I understand? The reason for that is that my mind, through which I am trying to grasp the subtlety of this truth, is too cloudy. It is full of action, reaction. It is not clear. There are a lot of examples given. It is kind of like a mirror where it is so dusty that it does not reflect my own reality in a very clear manner. So therefore, what is said is, two things have to happen. I have to find a person who understands the truth about this, is Sadguru, and I have to also clarify my own mind, make it clean. Shuddha Chittam, Shuddha Antakaranam. This is what has to happen. And if that happens, I am in good shape. Then I see myself as being the very reality behind the whole world, and I cannot really be concerned to the degree that I am. Right now I'm very concerned because I don't understand myself enough to give it enough credit. And so therefore I have to depend on the so-called reality of the world. But once I really slowly discover that the reality is not the world's reality, but my own reflected reality, I am the very source of it, then I calm down. And in fact, it is said that, in fact, we can just go through this. I'll just wait for a minute what I was going to say. So here, so this relative non-reality of the world, what is called the mithyatvam of the world, has to be appreciated in many different ways. It is not a very simple thing that you just say, oh, this world is unreal. My mind says, I'm listening to you, but I don't find it unreal. And so the unreality of the world has to be presented in such a manner that is credible to me through various ways and so on. And so here, the mithyatvam is presented in different ways. Okay? So, for example, in verse number 30, 35, 40, 41, this is presented in different ways. So you can go into some of the details of that in those pages. But I think that in Swami Akhandananda's explanation of mithyatvam in the Karika, the last Karika of Mandukya Upanishad is very useful, very, very nicely done. So I'll just present that briefly and then I will go back to the verses here. So he says, listen, let's take the action of smelling some kind of some sugandhi. So, so there's some very nice aroma to something. So if you look at the action of smelling, or you can do the same thing on seeing, touching, etc. But he gave the example of smelling, so I'll just keep to it. So he says if you look at the action of smelling something, okay? Now, how do you know there is something which is pleasant sound, pleasant smelling? How do you know that? Well, you know something smells well if you have a functioning nose. And functioning nose doesn't mean the outside, but the indriya of smelling, which is in and through the nose, created by Ishvara, that is the one that proves that there is a very nice aroma. Isn't it? So, Swamiji says, now listen, if you smell something good or bad, doesn't matter, but if you smell something, what does it mean? It means that you have a smelling sense organ functioning. Because if you didn't have a smelling functioning sense organ, you will not be able to smell something good, smell anything. So the smell is the cause of the discovery of your nose, your smelling sensation. Okay? So in technical terms, the Vishaya, which is something that you are, supposing I am holding a flower, the flower is the Vishaya, and my smell sense organ is the cause for it. So here the Vishaya is so let's look at the other way around. So Vishaya is the cause for the discovery of my sense organ. So where it's the Karana, what is also another Sanskrit word is you will call Pramana. Like a Pramana means, that suppose you, and it happens to all of us, all of a sudden you come into the house after being out for a day or so, and then you say, oh, there is a dead rat somewhere. So somebody can say, how can you say that? Hey, I smell it. I know what a dead rat smells like. So that means your sense organs are functioning. This is what is called prameya. Prameya means something that is proven. And what is pramana? A dead rat is the pramana. How do you know that your nose is functioning? Because you smell a dead rat. So now look at this. The dead rat is a pramana and your sense organ is a prameya. This is how it is defined. Prama. Prama means knowledge. And so the one that generates prama is called pramanam, which means a proof. So the reason for it is the rat. If you didn't have a functioning nose, you will never be able to tell the rat. But since you can smell a rat, that means your nose is functioning. So the one is a pramana and the other one is prameya. Okay? Alright. Now let's look at the other way around. How do you know this is a dead rat? Because the pramana is a sense organ. So the prameya is the dead rat in this case, and the pramana is a functioning sense organ. So now we have a very interesting case. This is a very important, it may sound a little technical here and so on, but we will go over this in more detail when we go to Mandukya. It is really the crux of a lot of clarity. So here now, there is a duality. This is what is called anyonya ashrayatvam. This is the technical word in Sanskrit used. Anyonya means mutual dependency. How is it a mutual dependency? Is it the rat that proves the functioning sense organ, or is it the functioning sense organ that proves the dead rat? You can never tell. Both of them are mutually. So the reason I bring this up is, along with the other definitions of mithya, one very definitive condition for mithyatvam is anyonya ashrayatvam. When two things mutually depend on each other, they cannot be independently proven to be by itself. You need something to smell in order to prove your sense organs are working, and you need sense organs to prove that there is something outside. And these two are mutually dependent, they just sustain each other. But none of them, it's kind of like a perpetual dance, if you may, revolving around each other. This is not what reality is. In that example, Swami Akhandanandaji points out that, listen, if you look at Parthiva Sat, Parthiva Sat means the Sat of the Prithvi, the earth. The earth is the ashraya for both the dead rat or any rat, even living rat, and your sense organs. Your sense organs are also made out of Prithvi, of course, along with the various other supporting sense organs like Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apaha. But basically, your body and even the sense organs that we have are made out of earth. They may be a sattvika portion of the earth. So the mind, which reflects chaitanyam, consciousness, is made out of the sattva guna. of Prithvi. But the dead rat is tamo guna of the Prithvi. But it's the two gunas of the same Prithvi. So now understand this. On a relative level, both the dead rat as well as your sense organs are mithya. Why are they mithya? Because they are mutually dependent on each other. But supporting them is the adhisthana, which is Prithvi. How is it the adhisthana? Because the rat also is made out of the earth, and your sense organs are also made out of the earth. So both of them are made out of the earth. So with respect to that example, the earth is the Satyam. And this interplay of Vishaya and the sense organs is Mithya. If you continue doing this, what you find is that the Jagat that you see, now we have expanded the dead rat, which is only a singular experience. It is a smelling experience only. But now if you expand it to the whole Jagat, the same logic applies. Anything that you objectify can only be done through your mind. You cannot objectify something until you have the mind. You cannot prove that you have a mind until you see something. And you cannot see something until you have a mind. So they are also anyonya ashrayatvam. They are also holding each other. Both are mithya. Both are mithya. And if you don't, if you want an example of that, this is exactly what happens in the dream. In the dream, both the dreamer as well as the dreamt are mithya. Again, the same logic applies. You cannot see a dream until you have a dreamer person, and you cannot be a dreamer person until you see the dream. And both are mutually exclusive and mutually interdependent. And supporting both of them is you, the Sakshi. So this is a very beautiful definition of Mithyatvam. So we will go into more detail later on, but just to summarize, this is what is called Sapekshatvam and Nirapekshatvam. Sapekshatvam means dependence on something in order to prove its reality. And Sapekshatvam, Nirapekshatvam. Nirapekshatvam means that you don't need anything else to be there in order to prove your reality. So in the case of the dead rat and the sense organs, they are sapeksha. They are dependent on each other. You cannot prove that there is a dead rat until you have the sense organ, and you cannot prove you have a sense organ until you smell something. So they are sapekshaha. So anything which is sapekshaha is mithya. And the only thing which is nirapekshaha, swayam siddhaha, as we have been seeing in all our classes, swayam jyotihi, we did the meditation on Saturday on Bhagavad Gita, is the Atma. That is the only test of reality. You cannot depend on anything else. It is independently there. This has to be understood, and once it is understood, you're done. So along with these other definitions of mithya, which I will now give, which is given in these pages, this is a very important analysis and is given very beautifully in the in the Alata Shanti Prakaranam, the fourth Karika by Gaudapadacharya ji for the Manduke Karika. This is verse number, I think 74, 75, 76, quite late. It's what got 100 verses in the last one. Now, the more easier way to define mithyatvam, there are the following. One definition of mithyatvam is, it's called drishyata. Drishyata, drishyatvam or drishyata, either one is feminine, drishyata, and drishyatvam is neuter. So the status of being seen, drishya means to be seen, subject to being seen, subject to being objectified is called drishyatvam. Here is very interesting. A lot of the other schools of thought, not only other schools of regular schools of thought, but even the normal way of our looking at the world is, if it is seen, it must be real. Isn't it? This is the way we think. If I see something, then it is real. Means it is there, I can see it, and it's as opposed to something that I cannot never see or taste or anything. If I can either taste it or see it or smell it or touch it, etc., or hear it, then it must be real. There is something there. This is called drishyatvam. We Vedantins have just the opposite viewpoint. We Vedantins say, if it is seen, that means it is not there. What? Really? How can you say that? The very fact that you can see it means it is not there. It is as a mithya. How? Because when you see something, what is seen is dependent on the drashta, the seer. If the drashta is not there, the drishya cannot be seen. Drashta means the seer, drishya means the seen. So just look at this. The very fact that something is being seen means that there is a drashta, but the drishya is not there. Or you can say the drishya is there only seemingly there. Seemingly there. So for example, you can say that the ornament which can be seen, the form and the name and form of the ornament can be seen. But really speaking, the ornament, there is no vastu. There is no independent thing called the ornament which has its own weight, its own color. No. You are really seeing the gold. You're not seeing the ornament. So if you see the ornament, that means it is mithya. So similarly, when we see something, when we see the world, the Vedantic view is that it is mithya. Now the mithyatvam of the world does not have the power to convince you until you have the ability to see the non-mithyatvam of yourself. You see, this is the thing that needs to be seen. That as long as the world appears real to you, so long you do not understand the real reality about yourself. And to see the test, whether you have arrived as a Jivan Mukta, as they say, is to what degree you can see that you are there, but the world comes and goes. Because as a drishya, it is only dependent on the drashta. But the drashta does not depend on the drishya. This is what Swami Dayanand used to say. This is the funny Vedic equation, Vedic logic. A is equal to B, but B is not equal to A. That's what he used to say. And by that we mean that gold is an ornament, but the ornament is not necessarily just gold. There was Swamiji used to give this example. He says, and Swami Akhandananda and Swami Maheshananda, they all give this pretty much the same example. So he says that the example is given in different ways. So there was a jeweler of gold. He just had gold in his shop, and so one day he went to a shop to buy some significant new thing like a car. And the person said, I can give you some discount on this car, but you have to give me the payment right now, today itself. Today is the last day for, this is what happened to me last year. I got some extra discount because it was the last day. I negotiated with the person and I said, no, I cannot buy this unless you give me $2,000 less. So he went to the boss, and this is the best time to buy a car, is the last day of the month or the couple of days, because they have a quota that they want to fulfill. So he gave me the discount. Anyway, so this jeweler went to, supposing he has to buy a car, and the car fellow says, you have to pay me right now. He says, I can give it to you. Is gold okay? He says, yeah, gold is okay. So he called his son on the phone, and teenage son or something who had the keys to it, and he says, please go to the shop and please get me so many pounds of gold because I have to buy a car today. Okay? So the guy goes to the shop and he looks around and he calls him back and he says, Dad, you asked me to bring you some gold, 2.5 pounds or something, but I can't find any gold. There is no gold. So he says, what happened? What happened to the gold? He says, all I find is ornaments. There is no gold. So the man said, "Oh my God. Sir, gold ornaments are gold. Just bring me something. Doesn't make any difference. Let me decide which ones to give him, which one not to give him. Just bring all the ornaments." So the ornaments are not gold, but the gold is ornament. So similarly, the drishya depends on the drashta. But the drashta is independent. Sakshi. Here we can make a distinction. So the drashta here could be the ahankara, could be the vijnanam. So that is not what we are talking about, because the ahankara is also a drishya. You see, if the ahankara is also a drishya, then the same rules apply that we saw earlier, where it was mutually dependent. So you have to say sakshi, which is nirapeksha. And all drishyas are sapeksha. Anyway, so now we have two rules. Just look at this. Let's make a list of the rules by which we can say a vastu is mithya or satyam. What was the first rule? If the vastu is sapeksha, if it requires some dependency, then it is mithya. The second rule is a simplification of the first one, that if you can objectify it, it is mithya. Drishyatvam iti mithyatvam. Sapekshatvam iti mithyatvam. Drishyatvam iti mithyatvam. Number 2. Number 3. If it comes and goes, if it has janma and marana, it is mithya. Right? So, as in Gita, it says, right, in the second chapter, Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidhanani deva eva. He says, why are you worried about something that came and went? So the third definition of mithyatvam is Janma nasha shilata, shilatvam. Janma nasha shilatvam. Anything that is begun, stays for a while, then disappears, is mithya. Applies to the whole world. Okay, so that's number 3. Fourth one is vyavaharatam, vyavaharata, vyavaharata or vyavaharatvam. Means that anything which is dependent on name and form is mithya. And really speaking, all of our bhavas are of that type. Because we look at things and we give a specific name to it. This is good. This is hot. This is cold. This is old. This is useful. This is non-useful. This is a friend. These are all names and forms. So this is the last quality of mithyatvam, which is it has vyavaharatvam. And vyavaharatvam means that it is only there with respect to name and form. Right? So that's also samsaratvam, you can say. So from samsaratvam, you should at least bring it down to jagatvam. But the jagatvam also is just a temporary respite, because big jagat is also drishya. So then if you fall down from bhavatvam or vyavaharatvam, at least that's the first thing that we should do, is to get rid of our likes and dislikes. Then the next thing we have to do is one which is born and dying is also not true. The next thing we should do is, because it is seen by me, it is not true. And the last one is the very first one that we saw, that if it depends on me, it is not true. Not real. Not real. So my mind has to be educated. Just by saying, the world is mithya, so give it up, it doesn't do anything, because it has to be proven step by step, detail by detail. It has to be convinced of it. And then the mind says, you are right. And so this is what viveka means, really speaking. So this is the vastu avastu viveka, atma anatma viveka, satya anrita viveka, satya mithya viveka. And this viveka has to be done very meticulously with truth. And then, once the viveka is done, to a large degree, not a total one perhaps, to a large degree, then it has to be followed by vairagya. Because a viveka without vairagya is as good as aviveka. That means you are not following the truth of what you discovered. You just are too casual about it. You're too academic. You're too pedantic. You just want to be smart and say, oh, I know about viveka and so on and so forth. But there are people I don't like, situations that I cannot stand. My world goes on, you are still a baddha, you are still a bound person. So the viveka is the prelude to vairagya, and you have to do it for yourself. What are you bothered by? If you're bothered by things that are not real, that means your work is not finished yet. And by the same token, if you have not discovered the value of the Atma, which is Satyam, that means your Viveka and your Vairagya are not effective. So this is what is called Sarvakarma Sannyasa, or any normal sannyasa. Vairagya. So then this is these are the steps, and many of these verses I didn't follow. I was hoping to do a kind of like a verse by verse kind of a thing, but I feel that if I do it a little bit more free form, then then it'll be better to explain it. And then if you want to really get into the details of it, the book is there, and whether English translation or Hindi translation or whatever, so you can look at it in more detail. But the whole idea of what the what Atmananda and Advaitananda is given in these conceptual ideas that we are going over. Anyway, so with that I close the class, and I think I would have covered up to in this way verse number 53, and then from now on I will go further and not belabor the same points so that we can move ahead. So in the next class I will look at verse number 54 onwards. Okay, so with that I close the class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. There's a new name, Thakur 765. I'm not sure I know you. If you can just send me an email, I would appreciate it. And there's some people that are joining after quite a while. Larry Lopez. Madhavadas also. Murali. Good to see you all. Wonderful. Right, there's no questions per se, so look forward to seeing you again next week. Okay, Hari Om.